going into a divorce, try to reframe your mind that just because something's in your name or their name doesn't make it just yours or theirs, unless it falls into one of those exceptions of premarital or non-marital property.
Infidelity in certain circumstances. How is that connected to the financial related issues in a divorce case?
Illinois is a no-fault divorce state, so it doesn't matter as far as people say, he cheated, I want more. That's not happening. And I will tell them the judge does not care if they are the worst person on earth. It doesn't matter, but...
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie VanDeusen. I'm the managing partner at Sterling Hughes. And with me on my podcast today is partner Nina Kelly. Thanks so much for joining us today, Nina.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hello.
And so today we're going to be delving into the main or major legal issues involved in divorce cases. And we're really going to hone in and specifically focus in on financial issues. So Nina, based on your experience, high level, what are the financial issues involved in divorce cases?
So when you're getting divorced, really just think about it. We need to divide up all of the money, right? Whether it's an asset or a debt. So that's going to be your house or any rental properties or properties that you own. It's going to be dividing any investment and retirement accounts. It's going to be dividing any bank accounts, savings accounts, debts like loans, credit cards, vehicles, and what we're going to do with those. The two types of support, which is child support and maintenance, maintenance, which used to be called alimony. And then potentially college contribution as well. So there's a lot of kind of different bullet points that kind of essentially encapsulate everything else will kind of fall under one of those. I don't think I missed any. Did I miss any? I think I got them all.
I don't think so. I think you're very thorough and you hit on everything. Let's take these kind of in stride. So the very first one that I kind of heard you mention, or maybe it wasn't the first one, but one thing that I'd like to hone in and focus in on is support. And so what does a court look at when it comes to like support related issues? And again, high level, do they look at income from all sources? Do they look at business? Retirement income? Like, what does that entail?
So it's exactly what you said. It's income from all sources. So if you have a regular job, if you're getting, dividends that you are actually collecting, if you have a pension that you're collecting on or retirement, if you have rental property, all of that kind of comes into play. It would take me hours to actually talk about all the nuance, obviously, but we kind of want to break it down into what is your income? If you have a business, you can take away reasonable expenses. You can't take away all the expenses. That's like a very heavily litigated thing. But high level is what's your income per year, right? We use that figure for both parties to calculate support, and it's formulaic. So the arguments a lot of the time are determining what the incomes are. After that's done, the numbers are easy, right, Katie? I mean, it's just like, that's what the argument is. Then the formula is pretty much non-negotiable unless you want to agree to something else. But otherwise, the judge is 99.9% of the time going to use that formula.
Okay. So in terms of your experience, I think it's called a deviation or a circumstance where the judge is not going to kind of default to that formula.
Right.
Have we seen any cases or any case law that's come out where maybe someone was successful with deviating? Or is there any wiggle room there is what I would ask.
There is wiggle room. I think it's rare. Something you always look to is, do they need it, right? Is there a need for it? People are going to exchange information in the beginning, which shows their monthly expenses. Do they actually have a need for maintenance? Do they have a need for child support? That's definitely going to be looked at. If somebody, really can't afford it, although I really have not, if they're going to be the obligor, I find it even less common for them to deviate based on the obligor. I think it's more common for it to be based on the obligee's need if there's not a need for it. Would you agree?
I definitely agree.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you. I think you have to be very strategic with how you argue a deviation and what facts you're presenting to a judge, because I think some will land and some will just fall on deaf ears. Like the age-old argument of, well, I can't afford it. That's not going to be a valid basis for a deviation. It's really going to be very fact-focused, fact-specific. So I definitely agree with you on that. And then kind of shifting gears to maybe assets next. So when it comes to a house or a business or retirement and investment accounts, how deep does a judge delve into those things? And how does that impact how they allocate those things?
So everything that you get during the marriage is going to be considered marital, right? It's not necessarily a 50-50 split. That actually is, people might think that it comes in that way. We are not a 50-50 state, where it's called an equitable state. So the judge is going to want to know the values, right? What the full picture of the estate, and then the specific accounts. And then what's fair? What's equitable? Does one party earn 500,000 and one earns 50? That might be a reason to give them more of a 401k, or um, does one have a large inheritance or something like that that they've already received? That could be a reason to divide it not 50-50. But if they're in very similar financial positions, then it probably is going to be divided about 50-50. So we want to basically just look at the values of everything. Something I like to tell all clients too, Katie, is not everything has to be divided down the middle, right? We can use offsets. Like if you got $100 in one,
Next question,
yep,
we were aligned on that. My
yep,
next question was, how much wiggle room is there? Do you have to just equally split everything right down the
no.
middle?
First of all, people can agree to pretty much everything they want, as long as it's not unconscionable, right? If it's not completely unfair to one side. But otherwise, we can, I think of it like a balance sheet, right? Like if you've got this much total and they've got this much total, what are we doing to kind of equal those? Doesn't mean we have to chop up all the accounts, because that's kind of a headache.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Uh, and is there any like similar analysis when it comes to the debts?
Yes, very similar. So you could even offset part of the assets with the debts, right? Like maybe party A has more assets, but they've also got more debt in their name. Maybe we're going to agree that they can just keep that, all of that as an offset. There's really not a one size fits all way to divide an estate. Again, it's really specific to each case. But the debts too, if it's incurred during the marriage, presumed to be marital, assume it's going to be split in some way or the other, and then it just kind of comes down to how it's going to be split.
And so when someone's considering, whether or not to proceed forward with a divorce, and I know we're, really focusing in on the financial issues, what would you say is one of the biggest misconceptions that you see, or something that you would want to maybe warn someone about prior to going down this path?
Well, first, I think it would be that they assume 50-50, right? Because it's not. Second, something I want people to be like aware of before they get divorced, because it is something you can kind of mess up for yourself, is if you're getting a gift from somebody or an inheritance, you want to keep that separate. So even if it was received during the marriage, that can still be considered your non-marital property, but you're going to want to put it in a separate account, and you're not going to want to commingle marital money with it. So just keep it in a separate account. I think the number one thing people kind of kick themselves about when they come to us, if they've already done that.
And when we say commingle, we're really saying that when you get an inheritance and it's in your sole name, if you add that person to that account and it's co-titled, or you put it into a joint bank account, that's really what we mean by commingled, right,
Mhm.
Nina?
Right. Or, you're taking your income, which I want to talk about too, Katie, and you're putting it into that account. And people think, well, it was mine. No, if you earned it during the marriage, it's marital, which is another really big misconception. Um, a lot of people keep separate bank accounts, and they split the bills. I have my money, he has his money. That's not marital. And a lot of people are really surprised by that. I mean, I'm sorry, that doesn't make it non-marital. It is all marital. So people I think a lot of people don't think that it's marital. And through the case, I kind of have to like untrain them to say, well, that he has this money, I have this money. And I'm like, no, it's all of your money. Just because it's not natural for people to think that way, I don't think.
Agreed. Now, are there any exceptions to marital property from, let's talk about maybe something that existed prior to the marriage that was kept separate?
Right. So, like an inheritance or a gift that you got during the marriage, premarital property would also be considered your own. You want to make sure we have some sort of proof that it was from before the marriage. But, like, um, if you put money into retirement before the marriage, we can almost, not always, but almost always kind of keep that as your own, that portion of it. If you had just even like cash in an account that was premarital that you never mixed in with the marital stuff, and you can prove it, that could be yours. Um, So that's kind of another way to prepare, I guess, would be to kind of just make sure you're keeping things separate.
Absolutely. And then any other misconceptions when it comes to maybe, unfortunately, we do have a tendency to see infidelity in certain circumstances. How is that connected to the financial related issues in a divorce case?
So I do, unfortunately, because it's divorce, we do see that a lot. It doesn't, Illinois is a no fault divorce state, right? So it doesn't matter as far as people say, well, he cheated, I want more. That's not happening, right? And people kind of don't like to hear that answer, but I don't like wasting my clients' time. I want their expectations to be accurate. And I will tell them the judge does not care if they are the worst person on earth, if they, it doesn't matter. But it does matter if they were spending money on those affairs, because that is money we could potentially claw back.
Awesome. And what would that even look like? We use the term clawback, but let's just say, for example, someone spends $5,000 on a vacation to take their, significant other, and they're, cheating on their spouse. How would that come into play when it comes to like the marital estate itself?
So, without getting into too many details, essentially we would ask the judge for that person to reimburse the estate. So, when we're dividing things, let's say it is a 50-50 division, essentially that would be like a $2,500 payment going towards that other party, because the 5,000 would go back into the estate and then it would be split 50-50, or if there was a different proportion. But essentially it's reimbursing the estate prior to the division.
Got it. All right.
Yeah.
Any other comments or anything else to note or be aware of on this topic, Nina?
I could go on all day, Katie. So I think we could probably do a lot more on these. But I think, again, I would just urge people to, when you're going into the divorce, try to reframe your mind that just because something's in your name or their name doesn't make it just yours or theirs, unless it falls into one of those exceptions of premarital or non-marital property.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Nina, for your words of wisdom today. We really appreciate it. And we'll definitely spend more time kind of delving into additional details with each of these topics. But for today, we really high level focused in on the issues related to divorce cases, specific to the financials. So thanks for coming, Nina.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.
You might think that deciding custody is simple, but even small mistakes can change everything. Find out how Illinois courts really decide parenting time in our next video.